It was the 1970s, and a serial killer walked the streets of New York City for more than a year, terrorizing everyone, especially women, until this man was captured, putting an end to it all, but leaving many with the question, why? Hello, I'm Maurice Dubois. Thanks for joining us for this look back at the son of Sam. David Berkowitz's reign of terror spanned 13 months. He used a .44 caliber handgun to shoot innocent people in 3 of the city's 5 boroughs in more than a dozen seemingly random attacks. The crimes led to one of the biggest manhunts in the city's history. Let's go back to the beginning. On July 29, 1976, Berkowitz attacked his first victims in the Bronx when he shot 2 18-year-old women, Jody Valenti and Donna Loria. They were sitting in Valenti's car when they were shot, and Loria did not survive. On October 23rd and November 27th in Queens, 4 more people were shot. They all survived. 2 months later, in January of '77, he struck again. 26-year-old Christine Frund and her fiancé, John Deal, were shot as they sat in Deal's car in Flushing. He survived. Frund, who was hit twice, later died. Berkowitz waited another 2 months before showing up in Flushing again to kill 19-year-old college student Virginia Voskarishian as she walked home. On April 17, 1977, 18-year-old Valentina Suriani and her boyfriend, 20-year-old Alexander Esau, were sitting in Suriani's car near her home in the Bronx when they were each shot twice and died. For the first time, the .44 caliber killer, as he was known, left a handwritten note for the police at the crime scene. It is there that he referred to himself as Son of Sam and promised to commit more killings. David Berkowitz's killing spree ended almost exactly 1 year after it began on July 31st, 1977. That is when 20-year-old Robert Violante and 18-year-old Stacy Moskowitz were shot in Violante's car in Brooklyn. Violante would lose his left eye. Moskowitz would die 18 hours after the attack. The shootings were the first to take place in the borough of Brooklyn and the first involving a victim with blonde hair. Reed Collins of CBS News had this report.
At 5:22 p.m. Monday, Stacy Moskowitz stopped living. The doctors said they had not turned off the life support. It was just that the horrible damage done by a .44 caliber bullet in the brain was too much. 40 minutes after their daughter died, the parents spoke to reporters.
Even though I lost so dear, I found many friends who I'll never forget. And I thank you for being kind and for your sympathies.
I hope he suffers for the rest of his life. I hope he never has a minute's peace. I hope he suffers and just eats his heart out with a cancer. Because he's nothing, he's not human. He's not human. To do this to a young girl and a young boy, if I lost a child, that woman has a son that's blind. To do this to young people, he can't be normal. He's not normal. And I would give anything. I would give my life right here and now. My daughter is dead, but I would die right here and now to see this man punished.
Well, the city is preoccupied with the killer, who in one note signed himself the Son of Sam. The latest victims were shot in Brooklyn, a new area for the assailant. An element of fear pervades neighborhoods which have not known fear before.
And it's something that we all have to worry about.
What is your wife saying?
She wouldn't even come out tonight. You know, she cried tonight when she heard that the girl died. Stacy Moskowitz died, and you know, I said that I was going to take her right out and see what the feeling was out here, and she didn't want to come. She doesn't want to leave the house until he's caught. She wants to stay home because she's frightened.
A beefed-up task force of 300 is working on the case now, sifting for clues, manning telephones, answering a flood of 8,000 calls in just one day. The one common element to the shootings is a gun. A 5-shot .44 caliber revolver made by Charter Arms, one of some 28,000 manufactured. Bullets in all the attacks have come from the same weapon. Whoever holds that weapon has killed 6 people and wounded 7 in 1 year and 3 days. The police have a composite sketch of their suspect compiled from witnesses' descriptions. But no one in the city of 8 million knows who is next. Reed Collins, CBS News, New York.
Up next, his killing spree comes to an end. How police finally caught up to the son of Sam and what happened after his arrest. Plus, an outburst in court from Berkowitz and a victim. Stay with us. In all, David Berkowitz killed 6 people and injured 7 others. On August 10th, 1977, police finally caught him, arresting him in front of his apartment building in Yonkers 45 years ago this month. Here's a look back at his capture and outburst during his first court appearance.
About 4 hours after David Berkowitz was brought to police headquarters in Manhattan, police said ballistics tests conclusively proved that the .44 caliber Bulldog revolver found in his car was the weapon used to kill the son of Sam's last victim, Stacy Moskowitz. Police artists had drawn several composites of what they thought Son of Sam looked like. It turned out that he most closely resembled the first sketch. There was a key witness. Police refused to identify her, a woman who says she saw police officers ticket Berkowitz's car the night of the last murder after hearing shots and being approached by a man with a dark object in his hand. The woman was afraid she might be stalked by Son of Sam and waited 4 days before contacting police. Berkowitz lived in Yonkers, north of New York. Police searching his apartment found 1 or more notes in the same handwriting as earlier Son of Sam messages. Police described him as a loner. His neighbors discussed their impressions with CBS News correspondent Bill McLaughlin.
He seemed strange to you?
Not strange. When he came in, you know, he spoke what's happening and everything, but...
He was friendly then?
Yeah, he didn't seem strange. Yeah, I never suspect him in this build. Out of every building in Yonkers, he's in 35 Pine Street. You know, that shocks me. Can't believe it.
Berkowitz worked for the Postal Service in the Bronx. An official told CBS News this morning he would not initiate conversations but would speak if spoken to. No one could recall his ever asking a female co-worker for a date. Berkowitz's mother is dead. His father, now retired, lives in Miami. He has a sister living in New York. So far, police have not identified her. When he was arrested, he reportedly told police, "Okay, you got me." According to ballistics tests, apparently they do. Steve Young, CBS News, New York. Shortly after he arrived at the Brooklyn courthouse, Berkowitz bit a guard badly enough to send him to the hospital as several guards stopped him from lunging toward a 7th-floor window. 90 minutes late, he made a wild entrance into the courtroom, looking straight at Mrs. Nisa Moskowitz, mother of one of his 6 murder victims, Stacy Moskowitz. To a weird nursery rhyme-like tune, Berkowitz, who had never known Stacy Moskowitz, sang "Stacy was a whore." Mrs. Moskowitz bolted out of her seat and screamed back, "You animal." That's right, Berkowitz replied in a whining voice. And then Robert Violante, Stacy's date the night she died, who was also shot by Berkowitz and lost an eye, rose and shouted, "You creep." After a recess, judges from the 3 boroughs where the murders occurred took the bench one at a time. The first quoted the last psychiatric report. It seemed to predict today's events. "Do you know what will happen during sentencing?" Berkowitz is asked. Then the psychiatrist's comment, Berkowitz's mood changes once again. Now his face lights up, his eyes twinkle. "I know, but I'm not telling." To a suggestion that there be another psychiatric evaluation in view of today's turmoil, a friend of the Moskowitz family bristled, stood, and shouted, "It's not justice. What about the families? They're human." Applause rolled over the courtroom. When a second judge spoke of delaying sentencing, another of Berkowitz's victims, Donna DeMasi, who was shot in the neck, shouted to the judge, "It should happen to you what happened to me." Later, she was cynical about Berkowitz's courtroom behavior.
I felt like killing. I felt like scratching his eyes out. Because it was an act, that's why.
And Robert Violante explained his courtroom outburst.
Total anger. That's it, just total outrage, and I really couldn't control myself.
Bronx District Attorney Mario Marola argued with the judge from his borough. This court has to bite the bullet and sentence him today. The district attorney's argument that psychiatric examinations could go on forever did not persuade the bench. Another examination was ordered and sentencing was delayed until June 12th. Steve Young, CBS News, at Brooklyn Supreme Court.
On June 12, 1978, Berkowitz was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for each murder to be served consecutively. And when we come back, my interview with the son of Sam himself and what he says led him to kill. In 2017, more than 4 decades after he was arrested, I sat down with Berkowitz for a 48-hour CBS News special. He told me what led him to kill, what his life was like before he became a murderer, and how it is now inside Shawangunk prison. I think there he goes right there. That looked like him, right?
Hello, God bless you.
Maurice Dubois.
It's an honor to meet you, sir. God bless you.
Thank you for talking with us.
Sure, okay. It's a big step, you know. I have my misgivings and nervousness and all those other things, but
understood. Is this a special place for you?
yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a place of refuge. You know, refuge from the storms of life. And you know, if you know anything about prison, there's a lot of storms. You know, it's not exactly a happy place. In prison, men are walking around carrying a lot of pain. I know I have a lot of pain inside me over, you know, things that happened, and this is a place where you could come and pour your heart out to God. My name is David Berkowitz, and I've been locked up since the time of my arrest, just under 40 years.
You just turned 64.
Yeah, I just turned 64, yeah.
How do the guys look at you? How do they see you? How do they perceive you?
Some guys, really, again, because of the passing of time, they're not even familiar with the case or anything. They may have heard about it, but it doesn't, just another face in the crowd. You know, no special attention, no special anything. That's the way I want it to be.
I want you, if you will, to take me through what it's like. Just tell me what your life is like.
Well, you know, in prison, there's a routine. You know, you can get up in the morning whenever you want. Some guys go to work assignments, some guys go to classes. I go later on to the library where I work in the morning as a clerk in the prison's library. Yeah.
Do you read the papers yourself?
Oh, yeah, some of them when I have time.
When you have time?
Yeah.
What do you mean, when you have time?
Oh, this is a pretty busy place.
I thought you had nothing but time. So this is not internet connected?
No, this is not. It's a closed system.
Right. And have you ever used the internet?
No, never have, no.
Or a smartphone?
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Or an app?
That's all space age stuff to me. I'm from the dark ages. I'm still with the old rotary phones. That's where I let tokens in the subway, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was 1977 again.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
In a sense.
I grew up in the Bronx. I had good times and bad times. I had some struggles over certain issues that happened, but I also had times of adventure.
What would you tell 23-year-old David Berkowitz today?
Turn around before it's too late, because destruction is coming. There was just a battle going on inside me. You know?
In your head?
Well, wherever, you know, just a battle going on. Yeah.
I guess here's the thing.
Yeah.
He's a Christian man who knows right from wrong,
Yeah.
who's had loving parents,
Yeah.
right? Who's very thoughtful. Yet at some point there, you killed 2 people.
Well, things happen, yeah, but that's it, you know.
It just kept going for more than a year.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, that was not me. I hate that name. I despise that name.
Which name?
That moniker, Son of Sam. That was not. That was a demon. That was a demonic entity that I was serving. And that was just a break from reality, and thought I was doing something to appease the devil. I'm sorry for it, but I really don't want to talk about it anymore.
Appease the devil?
Well, I was, at this time, I was serving him. You know, I was serving him. I feel that he had taken over my mind and body, and I just surrendered to those very dark forces. I regret that with all my heart.
In '77 is when the newspapers, you know, started to cover this.
Yeah.
44 caliber killer.
Whatever.
Son of Sam. You would see this stuff. It was on the newspaper, on the TV, on the radio. It was everywhere.
I don't want to discuss that.
I'm leaving my house, and I'm walking down the steps, and my mom turns to me, and she says, "Robert, be careful." And I turned around, and the next thing I said was, I'll never forget this, "Ma, don't worry, I'm going out with a blonde tonight."
What do you remember from the shooting itself?
The bullet totally destroyed the left eye and most of my right eye, and, you know, full of blood. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see Stacy sitting right next to me. I heard some moaning coming from Stacy. And that's the saddest part, that I never got to really know Stacy.
You still think about it to this day?
Yeah, that was really, really the sad part. They caught him, they caught him, they caught the piece of garbage. I'll never forget that, my friend Nicky.
What'd you say?
I was so elated, so happy. I said, thank God he's off the streets. He's not going to ever be able to hurt anybody else again.
These were beautiful young people.
I understand that, but again, there's no, it's just the way things turn out. It's regrettable, but that's it,
Did you do all these crimes alone?
Well, I felt that there were demons with me, but I'll have to save that for another time.
But you're the sole person who pulled the trigger, correct?
Well, a lot of things would have happened in that case, but I take responsibility, and that's it,
You take responsibility for all the Son of Sam murders.
Right, yeah.
There was nobody else involved.
Let's just put it this way, they were demons, and that was it.
You leave the door open, or is that?
Well, one day maybe I'll have a chance to share more, but we'll leave that at that.
So you show up in court when Berkowitz was going to be sentenced for the first time.
Yeah.
He said some foul things about Stacy.
Oh, yeah. I reacted. Go yourself, you piece of shit. You should die. You should rot in hell. I just went off on him.
What do you say to the victims' families, to the victims who are still living today?
Well, I've apologized many times, and I just always let them know that I'm very sorry for what happened, that I wish I could go back and change things, and that I hope these people are getting along in life as best as possible. I never forget people that were hurt, people that are still in pain, suffering loss because of my criminal actions. And I never forget that. That sometimes weighs very heavy on me.
Didn't have any children, so never got married, never had children, unfortunately. He ruins not just my life, 12 other lives, plus the families. So, how do you forgive something like that? Somebody like that? You don't.
When you think about the irony, I mean, here's a kid who lost his mom at 14, and you think about the depth of the pain that you felt. And then, years later, because of you,
yeah, sure, right.
6 people have that same kind of pain.
Oh, right.
7 others injured for life.
Mm-hmm.
How's that strike you?
It's very painful. It's very painful. I carry around a pain too. Not the same kind, but one that I'm aware of what happened, Yeah. I draw comfort, if you could call it that, from reading about in the scriptures about some of the well-known Bible characters that did very bad things, and how God forgave them, and God was able to use them in very special ways, very unique ways, and they became what we'd call champions of the faith.
Does it give you satisfaction to reach young people?
Yeah, sure. I get letters all the time. I have a calling to just write to encourage people from all walks of life. It's something I do on my own. I believe that that's what God has called me to do.
Berkowitz is a born-again Christian. He's a minister in prison. He takes a lot of pride in helping people. That's his thing. What do you think of that?
I think that's a lot better road to go down than serial killer.
You're in jail. What else you got to look forward to? You might as well, yeah, I found God. Why not? But I really think he did. That doesn't mean he's exonerated.
If he's trying to do better with other prisoners, so be it. That's God's way of probably making him understand how wrong and bad of a person he was. And now God's giving him a second chance to do right by other people. But it still doesn't change the fact of how I feel.
Does parole, is that attractive to you at this point?
As a realistic hope, I don't see any hope for parole, no.
I recently sat down with a 48 Hours producer who I worked with on that special. Murray Weiss was a crime reporter during that era, and he talked with me about the details of the case that he still vividly remembers. So August 10th, 1977, every year that date comes up. This is that time of year. Do you think back? I know you do. What are your thoughts each year?
As somebody who has been a crime reporter in New York for so long, and that case is one of the greatest cases in the annals of New York crime. And every year it rolls around, there are any number of people who recall, who lived through that era, who are still living, and they recall what a terrifying period that was in New York, like no other, really.
I was a kid back then, okay? And everyone, this is out on Long Island, hour away from here. Everyone was afraid. All the girls with brown hair were terrified. Everybody else was afraid too. But as a kid, I didn't fully grasp it. Here you are in the city, crime reporter at the time. What was the vibe back then?
Well, I worked at the New York Daily News then, and I was a young reporter at that time, and I worked with Jimmy Breslin. And the sense of enormous news and the electricity and fear that ran through the city itself, the people who lived here,
terror, was
on a level that people, I'll be honest with you, the only way to compare it in some ways is post 9/11, when the towers were attacked and the tragedy occurred. The fear factor that day was also frightening.
But this was fear for a year.
Correct. Correct.
Day in, day out.
Correct.
Headlines in the paper,
Correct,
letters written
correct,
by this
correct.
guy, and people were just beside themselves.
That is the point of it. The feeling of what was going on in the city and how it affected people's lives was beside anything that people today could live through, except thinking about how devastating crime was in general at that time too.
Right.
You know, 1,500 murders that year.
Right.
On top of just a reign of terror.
So they finally get him, though, August 10th, 1977. What was that like?
That was an extraordinary moment in this city, too. The elation, the relief that people felt, particularly women, obviously the joy in the police department. And actually, I was friends with a gentleman who owned a couple of very popular bars here in New York at the time, and he sent cases of alcohol down to One Police Plaza, where the cops had themselves these little private parties. There was so much joy that it was from the top of City Hall, from the mayor's office, down to every single woman in the streets of New York. And there was a sense of relief.
Right, and that relief, I mean, that changed into something else. It touches a nerve when people think about it to this very day.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. You know, there's a helplessness. There's a helplessness when there's crime, there's frightening crime, and you're possibly a victim at any moment. And that's what was happening in New York at that time. So I think people think back about how terrifying it was at that time.
And yet this guy who's arrested, one of the most unremarkable people you'll ever meet.
100%.
When I met him a year ago, okay, it was, you know, we knew him as Son of Sam, yet he's an unremarkable guy in the sense that he looks like anybody else, right? What about that aspect of it? This guy who walks in front of the cameras and people are like, really?
I will share with you. I was friends with a detective sergeant who was a lead investigator on that case. He became a very close friend of mine. And naturally, for a year, he was desperate to find this guy. They invented all kinds of concepts how to catch him. After shootings, we're going to shut down the bridges. We'll have 100 cops on every bridge. Every car will get searched. But anyway, his level of hatred, really, or dislike for the Son of Sam and wanting to catch him was beyond anything you can imagine.
This was a monster we're talking about.
To him, yeah. And then they caught him. And he went and he met him at the top of police headquarters. And when he walked in, he wanted to grab the guy and throw him out a window and kill him, right? But he said when he walked in and he saw that this was this pudgy, mushy man who clearly is not well, he almost felt pity for him in a way. He went from complete rage to wanting to chuck him out a window to this is what this is all about.
That was kind of my experience. I'm going upstate to Shawang, going to prison, and I'm getting ready to meet a monster. And in walks this unremarkable, pudgy guy, 64 years old at the time.
Little librarian guy?
Little librarian. That's, he worked at the library. He's never seen a cell phone. He doesn't know anything beyond. Remember, he was using the dime in the payphone back in 1977.
I remember you were like, is that him? That's him. There he is. No, that's him.
Right.
I remember you
but I flinched when I saw him. I was afraid, but then as it warmed up, here's this guy who's become a Christian, who says it wasn't him. He wasn't in his right mind when he did this. He said there were voices talking to him. I mean, it was a wholly unsatisfying explanation. You know, I was part of a cult, he said. The cops are convinced he acted alone.
Yes, yes.
He claims these other things. Where do you think the truth lies?
I think in his interview he was more saying that there were like demons with him as opposed to other people working with him.
Voices.
That, when he was acting out, you know, there were the devil was with him, or there were demon-esque things that were possessing him. He wasn't just himself. I don't think he was really saying that he was part of like a cult where there were more accomplices.
Okay.
You know, and actually the chief of detectives who we interviewed for that, you know, he said once we arrested him and they checked out all the cult stuff, the shootings and homicides stopped. You know, so the police were obviously convinced that he was acting alone.
That was their proof.
Yeah.
Really chilling was the idea that he was getting ready to kill again outside the 5 boroughs. He was looking at the Hamptons as his next stop. What do you remember about that?
He was going to go to a very popular discotheque out in Southampton area, and he had automatic weapons in his trunk. He was ready to do more than just solo shooting of 1 or 2 people in a lover's lane.
He's going to step it up.
Yeah. The kind of stuff we see today, actually, on a grander scale.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think there are more victims? He pleaded guilty to 6 killings, 7 shooting injuries.
I'd have to say no. I think, you know, he was using a very unique gun, high caliber 44 bullet. That's how they eventually put the case together against him, that they had separate 2, 3, 4 shootings, and the police department finally recognized, whoa, we're getting somebody shot here with a high caliber gun, high caliber bullet here, and that's when they began to see the pattern. It wasn't just separate shooting in the Bronx and a shooting in Queens, and we don't know, you know, what they connected it through the bullets. So I would think that that's it, or they would have found more.
Yeah.
I think they would have found more. But those were terrifying enough.
Tell me about it.
6 dead, 7 wounded.
No question.
You know, over an extended period.
And he's come up for parole, I believe, correct? Do I have that right? A number of times, but it doesn't look like he's going to get out of prison. Do you think he'll ever see the light of day again? He's
led an exemplary life inside prison, but I think there'd always be the question of, is he a danger to society? And I don't think the state of New York would want to risk that, actually, or the people on the parole board. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would want to risk that.
No, no.
To be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree.
Any other thoughts on this 45th anniversary, Murray?
You know, it's funny. It's one of the things that hit me today. It's not per se this case, but you know, you think how terrifying that case was and how he got away with it for so long. You know, there was no surveillance cameras in those days, so the difficulty of that case, you know, is what's striking. You know, that a man could walk around with a weapon and kill people, and literally, you know, how do you begin to solve a case like that? And so the police were at an enormous disadvantage, obviously. And that, you know, that's some of the singular differences between then and now.
Right, and the parking ticket that broke this case open, that's unbelievable.
That's a remarkable story. Right. And I recall being told that when they were told by a witness that, oh, I saw some car get tagged with a parking ticket, and they went looking for it. The police couldn't find it, and the cop on the beat kind of didn't even remember that he gave a ticket, and they had to go scouring through closets and lockers to actually find that summons that led to the name Berkowitz, and they thought maybe he was just another witness. Right. And so, you know, he came out and the cops were there. No, they called the precinct,
right,
the local precinct up there, and the woman who answered the phone was the daughter of Sam Carr, whose dog he had shot. And she said, oh, that guy's crazy. And the next thing you know, the cops were up there, and he comes out.
You got me.
Boom, yeah, you got me.
Yeah, amazing detail. Murray Weiss, thank you so much. Certain media coverage of the killings drew criticism at the time, especially from some competing papers that felt the murders were being exploited and Berkowitz was being glorified. Eye on 2 was a talk show here on CBS 2. There was a panel of guests, including Daily News columnist Jimmy Breslin, who sat down together in October of that year. And you can see that part of our special, as well as anything you missed here on CBSNewYork.com. I'm Maurice Dubois. This has been a look back at the Son of Sam. Thanks for joining us.